Hello everybody and welcome to what is going to be a point 0.5 episode of Rule the Waves 3. I wanted to kind of go over some potential design concepts now that we finally actually have money. Like we actually have a budget that's reasonably usable. And maybe if we're lucky we'll have time to actually build stuff. So I wanted to go over some potential design concepts. So it's March 1937 in the campaign, so this is a March 1937 design study to sort of go over some, like I said, concepts. So first up, we need some new Corvettes. Very much. These are two basic design concepts that I had. One is a 600-ton minesweeper, 20 knots speed using oil and turbine. Maybe not using oil and turbine. That's just how I designed it initially. I think coal and turbine is actually slightly cheaper. I'd have to double check on that, but we'll end up using whatever is the cheapest engine option. It'll have one 4-inch gun, local only fire control, 130 rounds per gun, because that's the lowest amount we can give it before the game says, are you sure you want to use just that much? Or you want to give the ship that many rounds per gun? We give it a couple of mines just because there's really no reason to do it. We could just not do the mines, we'll see. I may just remove them because I don't really know what purpose they serve significantly. In this regard. And then, of course, minesweeping gear because it is a minesweeper. This leaves us with a weight of about 240. I say about. This leaves us in the current configuration that I have listed here with a weight of 240 left. I don't know if there's any real benefit to a larger minesweeper outside of more capability to have it also serve as a mine layer. So, I mean, if somebody knows, feel free to let me know. We probably won't be building this next part, realistically. So you have a little bit of time to be able to let me know, and still have it be relevant. But I don't think, like I said, there's any real benefit to a larger Corvette for a minesweeper, realistically. On the other hand, and I accidentally labeled that as 11K, it is not 11K, it is 1.1 thousand tons, as is noted on the first bullet point here. Same 20 knots oil and turbine is the current configuration. We will probably switch that to coal and turbine, because like I said, I believe coal and turbine is actually cheaper, or is the cheapest option. It'll have one 5-inch gun, because why not? 5-inch guns don't have a penalty with a 1.1 thousand ton Corvette, so why not? Local only fire control as well, 130 rounds per gun. Again, that's the smallest amount before the game says, are you sure that's enough? It has ASW capabilities of 4 depth charge throwers and increased depth charge storage. Currently that gives it an ASW value of 6, as noted of course by the asterisk. However, I do need to be able to add enhanced sonar system down the road. Granted, that's going to be about a decade out, probably. I believe that becomes available sometime in the... Like, there's an event. I don't think this is actually a techie research. This is an event that comes up. Sometime in the 40s, I believe it is. Maybe early 50s, if we push it. I don't recall exactly when it was. I have another campaign that's further along, but I do not recall exactly when it becomes available. But when you get that event, technology, whatever, it tells you if you do not put this on your ships, they have half the ASW value. I believe it's half. I know they do lose some of their ASW value. I believe it is half. And I believe actually the way it works is that, you can put it on a ship and it will increase the ASW value. If you don't put it on the ship, it'll tell you what the ASW value is in the configuration you have. But when it comes to actually applying that ASW value to actually finding submarines, it basically applies it as half the value that the game tells you your ASW value is. I believe that's basically the way it works. So it can tell you you have an ASW value of 6, but if you don't add this, it actually applies it as like a 3. But if you add it, you maybe have a ASW value of 8, for example. And that has a weight of 150. We have 558 weight remaining, so we have quite a bit of room there to grow for upgrades. Next up is a design concept for a brand new light cruiser. The names for some of these, if I roughly know what number design this is, are accurate. Otherwise, I just kind of went with a large enough number that probably is good. So 10,000 tons, 31 knots, oil and turbine. Unlike the Corvettes, we're not going to go with go with coal and turbine. These are going to actually use oil and turbine. 3 inches of belt armor as per usual for most light cruisers that I design. 2 inches of deck armor, 3 inches on the conning tower and turrets, 2 inches on the turret top and for the secondary guns. They have 8 5-inch guns in a 4-2 configuration, so 4 turrets of 2 guns each. Obviously, it has advanced director, 150 rounds per gun, 24 4-inch secondary guns in a obviously 12-2 configuration, director firing, dual purpose, 250 rounds per gun, 8 torpedo tubes above water in a 4-2 configuration. Well, actually, that should be a 2-4 configuration because it's 2 sets. Well, it's 1 set. I don't know. Would you consider 1 torpedo launcher on one side and 1 torpedo launcher on the other side to be a set? I'd consider that a set, personally. I don't know if you'd consider the individual launchers a set, but whatever. We have 2 different launchers with 4 tubes each. 1 light AA, 7 medium AA, 1 AA director on this, giving us 37 heavy AA factor as technology currently stands. That, of course, could be higher down the road, and it will be higher down the road. 1 catapult and 2 seaplanes. Now, you'll notice this is realistically probably going to be the bog standard light cruiser design that we have going forward for the most part, at least until missiles become a thing. Once missiles become a thing, we'll probably be slapping anti-ship missiles and SAMs on these things like there's no tomorrow. But for now, this is the way it is. So I wanted to do a quick comparison of what does that look like compared to our current light cruisers that we basically just got in the form of the Suma class. So same size, these are slightly faster, they're a little bit less armored on the conning tower, and they don't have belt extended armor. The turret is a little bit heavier armored. Now, the Suma, it should be noted, is listed as it is currently configured. So currently it has improved director. Obviously with upgrades we'll give it advanced director. Now it has 16 5-inch guns. It has a forward superimposed, a whole bunch on the side, and then aft superimposed and an aft turret. The forward, aft, and the 2 superimposed have 2 turrets or 2 guns per turret, while all the ones on the side are just a single gun per turret. Now, of course, this didn't have the concept of dual purpose 5-inch guns because we didn't have it at the time where we designed the Suma. But you'll notice that I forwent that, even though we do have forwent. That doesn't sound right. But forgo doesn't really seem like it fits grammatically either. Whatever. You'll notice that I didn't give the new design study dual purpose 5-inch main armament. And the reason for that was mostly because I realized there's not a big difference, and the penalty for having different caliber dual purpose actually basically ruined the benefits in the first place. So as things stood, it made more sense to do 4-inch secondaries that are my dual purpose, with the main guns just purely being for anti-ship. This might change in the future. Another thing was that I did consider giving the new design 6-inch guns. I don't usually do 6-inch guns for the main. But I ended up deciding to not do that because the 5-inch guns, because they're quality 1, actually have better range than our quality 0 6-inch guns. It's not much. I don't even think it was 100 yards. I believe the game uses yards for range. It wasn't even 100 yards. It was somewhere less than 100 yards. I don't recall exactly what the difference was. But I still decided, no, I kind of would like to have the extra range. So yeah, the theoretical design that we're looking at right now for a future one doesn't have 6-inch guns for the main and 5-inch secondaries, which is what I had considered. But yeah, the reality is the secondary armament is not significantly different. The main difference just being the Suma doesn't have director firing because we didn't have it yet. In an inevitable refit, it will get it. Now, the Suma only has 6 torpedo tubes instead of 8 because it's 3 tubes per launcher. 1 light AA, 3 medium AA, 1 AA director, giving us the same 37 heavy AA factor. Big thing is just, we have 4 less medium AA. And then the same scout capabilities of 1 catapult and 2 seaplanes. Next up is a design for a new armored cruiser. So 19.9 thousand tons, because that is the max size we can build of an armored cruiser. 30 knot max speed, oil turbine, magazine box, inclined belt, 9.5-inch belt, 2-inch deck, 6-inch conning tower, 4-inch turret, 2-inch turret top, and 2-inch secondary guns. 16 10-inch guns in a 4-4 configuration with advanced director and 150 rounds per gun. 24 5-inch secondary guns, director, dual purpose, 300 rounds per gun, so they got quite a bit of firepower going for them. 1 light AA, 17 medium AA, 4 AA directors, and 53 heavy AA factor. Same scout capabilities as basically any other ship that we will be providing scout capabilities to, of a single catapult and 2 seaplanes. Now, how does this compare against the Takao? Well, the reality is it is actually pretty much a carbon copy of the Takao. The biggest difference is that we gain 4 extra guns. This is thanks to the technology we got. I don't recall if it was last part. It might have been the part before, but I think it might have been last part. Was it? I really don't recall. I feel like it was last part, but it might have been the part before. Either way, we were limited on the amount of guns we could put in a turret for the A and Y turrets, so the normal forward and aft turrets, not the superimposed ones. The superimposed ones didn't have these limitations. If we put torpedo protection, we were over a certain speed, we couldn't fit 3-4 guns per turret for the A and Y turrets. So as a result, the Takao is in a 2-4-4-2 configuration. 2 forward, 4 superimposed, or 4 forward superimposed, 4 aft superimposed, and 2 aft. Obviously, again, we haven't had the opportunity to have it go and do a refit, so it doesn't have advanced director. It currently has the improved director, 110 rounds per gun. And the other big difference is that it has a lot more ammo on the secondary guns at 500 rounds per gun. Now, you'll notice for these in the light cruiser, I didn't bother including the weight remaining because that wasn't a particularly important metric for me for these. I do now realize in hindsight, though, there is a future design that we look at where I probably should have, but I also realize it may not be relevant just because of the way that particular feature works and is impacted by stuff. I don't think that particular technology that I'm thinking of for a future design is like a set cost. I'll explain more what I mean when we get to the design in question. 2 light AA, 21 medium AA on the Takao, 2 AA directors. That's the main reason why there's a little bit more AA guns on the Takao compared to the theoretical new armored cruiser design. But the Takao only has 41 heavy AA factor, so that's an extra 12 that you may think doesn't make a big difference, but it does, especially when it comes to massed fire. Also, the Takao uses diesel, which isn't the worst thing, but in hindsight, the Takao probably shouldn't be using diesel. It probably should be using oil and turbine, and then maybe we could have slapped 2 more AA directors on there and still kept the same number of guns. Well, probably not actually, because those were limited, I think, by the topside space. So I don't know what we would have done. Probably maybe add more guns, more rounds per gun for the main guns. I'm really not sure what I would have done there. Now, this is, I know I said last part, I don't think we really need a brand new carrier design. It doesn't hurt to at least look at what a new carrier design would look like, though, even if we don't necessarily plan to actually build it right now. So 39.2 thousand tons is now the max size of a CV that we can build. 30 knots oil turbine, 2-inch belt deck turrets and turret top. 16 5-inch main guns, 8 guns, 8 turrets, 2 guns each. Advanced director, 200 rounds per gun, dual purpose. 24 4-inch secondary guns, 12-2 configuration, same as what we always use on secondary guns. Director, dual purpose, 250 rounds per gun. Now you'll notice, this time I went ahead and actually gave dual purpose for both the 5 and 4, which I didn't do for the light cruiser. That is largely because I made the decision that this should not be fighting ships. If this is fighting ships, something has gone horribly wrong. So I much prefer particularly once we get the techs that decrease the penalty for using multiple calibers of dual purpose guns, I'd rather just have them already be dual purpose so I don't have to do the refit later. Realistically is the reason why. But you'll notice it doesn't really have much in the way of a heavy A factor compared to the armored cruiser. The armored cruiser was 53. We're just going to skip ahead a little bit. This is only 54. And yet this has more guns providing heavy AA than the armored cruiser does. But let's backtrack just a little bit. 2 light AA, 25 medium AA, and 4 AA directors. Now this, because we did unlock flight deck catapults, this is designed right out of the gate with flight deck catapults and a 100 aircraft capacity, which is probably the max that we will generally build. Now here's the thing. This is the design in question where I was thinking, in hindsight, maybe I should have listed the weight remaining, because maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not. I have to double check something. And I could pause this and double check that, but I don't care enough to do that, so we're not going to do that, and I'll just address it in the next part. And that was, at some point, we will unlock jets. If we end up building this design now, we'll probably get jets during its deployment life, realistically, unless they all get sunk before that happens, in which case there's no need to worry about if it's possible to refit this to be jet capable. Because jet capable is its own tech, or its own feature that you have to toggle on. If you don't, then you get penalties when you try to put jets on your non-jet capable carrier. Now, it should be noted there is one jet type that is an exception to this rule, and that is the first jet you get of the light jet fighter. Those basically are just super fast props as far as the game is basically concerned. They follow the same ability to be equipped onto carriers as a prop does, as a prop plane. But when it comes to heavy jet fighters, jet attack, things like that, which I think those are really the only two in question that you can fit on a carrier, those, I believe, basically count for double their capacity. So when you basically, we would only be able to fit 50 aircraft on this if we're not able to refit it to be jet capable, and we try to actually put jets on here that are not the light jet fighter. But I don't know if the toggle for jet capable is a flat weight cost, or if it's dependent upon the aircraft capacity. I've not really paid attention to it in my campaign that's further along. And that's something I need to go back and double look at, or double check, and then, like I said, make note of this next part and address it real quick at the start. Assuming I remember, of course. But of course, if somebody knows the answer to that already, please feel free to say it in the comments. That'll help me out immensely because it saves me the time of doing it. But let's go ahead and compare that now to the Hosho, which is the current design that we have out. Again, this is comparing it as it stands right now. So the Hosho is 25.6 thousand tons, 28 knots max speed, oil and turbine. The Hosho does have magazine and inclined belt. We did magazine belt because, again, we figured you probably shouldn't be getting into a fight, so what does it matter? And it allows me to have been able to stick more aircraft on you. So you have 2-inch belt, 2-inch deck, 2-inch turrets, 2-inch turret tops. That's basically going to be our configuration for armor for all carriers going forward because they don't need to be particularly heavy armored. The biggest thing that might change is maybe slapping a little bit more on the deck. Just so that if they do get bombed, the bombs are less likely to go through and actually, penetrate the deck. If I recall correctly from Ruler Waves 2, the rule of thumb was basically in the late game. So 40s, 50s really. You were looking at having a deck of like 4.5, maybe 5 if you wanted to give yourself a little bit extra safety. For protection against enemy bombs, particularly heavy bombs like 1,000-pound plus bombs. Now, of course, the Hosho, because of when it was designed, we had to give it 8-inch guns. So it has 8-inch guns in a casemate configuration. So obviously it's 1 gun per turret, or well, 1 casemate rather. With 8 of those casemates. Improved director and 80 rounds per gun because we figured you don't need very much ammo because you shouldn't be getting into fights in the first place. Now, if the game will let me, when it comes time to refit the Hosho, we will probably switch it to 5-inch turrets. But we'll see. It depends on if the game lets me actually do that. I believe it should let me do that now, though, because this sort of follows the historical development to an extent, really, of carriers, where early carriers were designed with fairly big guns because they thought, well, what if it runs into an enemy ship? They didn't think it shouldn't be running into an enemy ship. So, yeah. I think we are past the point where that was the design philosophy for carriers, so I believe I should be able to refit it to have 5-inch guns. And then I can make them dual purpose and maybe give it a fair bit of ammo as well. Secondary guns are the exact same configuration as on the new design study. The only difference is they have twice the ammo because I had the weight and I didn't have anything else to really do with it, I think, was the thing there. It has 2 light AA, 38 medium AA, 3A directors, and 36 heavy AA factor. No flight deck catapults because we didn't have those when we designed it, and we haven't refitted it yet. And 70 aircraft capacity, which is still fairly decent. Let's be real here. 70 aircraft is quite a bit still. And now a brand new Dreadnought. Now you'll notice the Dreadnought here does not have a design study designation, DS, weight, and then class, and then the number of what design number this is. And that is because I already committed to this design. After I recorded the last part, I looked and said, what could a new Dreadnought look like? And I greenlit it on the spot after designing it. So 46,000 tons, which is our current maximum build capacity, or rather build size, not capacity. 29 knot speed, which is probably going to be the sort of standard for our dreadnoughts, I want to say. We might revisit that in the future, but I think 29 knots is basically what we're going to be shooting for the foreseeable future when it comes to our dreadnoughts. Magazine box, inclined belt, 15-inch belt, 2-inch belt extended, 5-inch deck, 2-inch deck extended, 14-inch conning tower, which probably could go down realistically, but we'll see on that one. 13-inch turrets, 4.5-inch turret top, and 2-inch secondary guns. And thankfully, because of that technology that we got that I mentioned earlier with regards to the replacement for the Takao, or the potential replacement for the Takao, we're able to slap more guns on this thing. So we have 12 16-inch guns in a 4-3 configuration, 4 turrets, 3 guns each. Should be obvious by now how I show that stuff. Advanced Director, only 100 rounds per gun. I think that's fine. Maybe if we can squeeze a bit more in there, we'll try to do that, but we're looking at 100 rounds per gun is probably also being the fairly standard for a dreadnought. 24 5-inch guns, 12-2 configuration, director firing dual purpose, 300 rounds per gun, 2 light AA, 41 medium AA, 4 AA directors, 59 heavy AA factor, and then the standard scout layout of 1 catapult and 2 seaplanes. Now, the reality is this is actually a pretty similar design to the Awami that is currently in the field. Biggest differences being that it's got a few more guns and it's bigger. But realistically, for the most part, it's a fairly standard design that we're going to probably mostly be just reusing for any future dreadnoughts. So the Awami, 3,000 tons smaller, same speed, 2 inches less on the belt, but beyond that, they're basically the same, with the biggest other difference for the armor being that it has 4 inches less of conning tower armor. It has obviously less guns, 10 16-inch guns in a 2-3-3-2 configuration, improved director, 100 rounds per gun. Same secondary configuration, the only difference being that they're not dual purpose, because again, they weren't dual purpose when we designed the ship. We didn't have the option. And it's got 50 rounds less as well. Unlike the Suo, which I'm probably mispronouncing, the Awami has tertiary guns because I still needed to have some sort of heavy AA factor, but I didn't want to sacrifice the secondary guns and make those 4 inches. I wanted them to be 5 inches. Partly because when we designed the Awami, we were hopeful that we were very close to getting dual inch 5 purpose, so we figured, okay, this will be a fairly easy swap in the future. And lo and behold, we have 5-inch dual purpose now. So now we just got to send it into the shipyard to actually do the swap. But as it's currently configured, it has 24-inch secondary guns in a 10-2 configuration, dual purpose with 250 rounds per gun. 2 light AA, 21 medium AA, no AA directors, and a measly 23 heavy AA factor. The Awami is not going to have a fun time if it gets attacked by aircraft, realistically, as it stands. So we're kind of grateful that we didn't really get them out until after our war with France and Russia ended, because we don't have to worry about it for a little bit. I have an opportunity to get in there and actually do the rebuilds. Now, this one is a bit of a, I'm not fully certain on it situation, because I don't really care too much for battle cruisers, especially since I'm pretty sure we're at the point in time in the game where the concept of fast battleships, which get treated basically the same as a battle cruiser, exists. So there's not too much of a use really for a battle cruiser, a dedicated battle cruiser, in my opinion. Outside of maybe having something that's effectively a dreadnought but a bit faster, is really about the only thing it has going for it, if we're honest. It's the same size as the new Suo class, 32 knot max speed instead of 29, so it's 3 knots faster. Magazine box, inclined belt, 12-inch belt armor, 2-inch belt extended, 4-inch deck, 10-inch conning tower, 12-inch turrets, 4.5 turret tops, and 2-inch secondary guns. It has 12 16 main guns in a 3-4 configuration, Advanced Director, 140 rounds per gun, all forward armament. Should be noted, of course, that despite what you may think, this turret is not capable of shooting over the other two turrets. This one can only work if we are broadside on, which is also another reason that I'm not too big on all forward designs. Now, we could go with just 2 turrets of 4 guns each, bringing us down to 8 guns, which is not a whole lot, if we're honest. It really isn't. That would save us a lot of weight and would actually allow us to not need to worry about, well, I got to go broadside if I want to use all my guns. So, we'll see. I'll be honest, I don't really think I'll be building this, but it is there as an option, so maybe. But for now, I'm not like super into it. Standard AA complement of 24 5-inch guns, director dual purpose, 300 rounds per gun. 44 medium AA, you'll notice the lack of light AA. We didn't need to put any light AA to maximize the turret, or excuse me, the top side space. So it's got just medium AA, 4 AA directors, 59 heavy AA factor, so same as the Suo, and then of course the standard the standard Scout complement of a catapult and 2 seaplanes. Obviously, those seaplanes will eventually get replaced by helicopters, but we don't currently know what the hell a helicopter is, and we won't know for about a decade. I'm trying to recall when you roughly unlock helicopters, and I want to say it's like early 50s, so a little over a decade actually, realistically. Now that's it for this design, or for, this basic design study. We'll see if I'll do these again in the future. This was just, something that came to mind. So, decided let's go ahead and do it. Now, you'll notice that we did not include a destroyer. And of course, if you watched the last part, you know why I didn't include a destroyer, or at least you have a good reason to suspect why I didn't include a destroyer. And that is because we literally designed a brand new destroyer last part. When the Prime Minister, I believe it's Prime Minister, don't quote me on that, came up to us and basically said, hey, if I give you a budget increase, can you build me 20 destroyers? And I said, sure, I'd be glad to do it. So they gave us the budget increase, and because we needed to get some more destroyers out anyway, rather than taking the budget and then spending it on something else, I actually spent it on destroyers. But of course we had to design a new one, because our current latest at the time was considered out of date. At least, when it comes to the build menu, I would have had to have checked on, show outdated designs, and then find it, and then build it. And I figured, okay, at that point, with the amount of advancements we had in technology between it, and when we were trying to build some more, I figured, yeah, we can probably build something better. So we built something better. So I didn't need to include a destroyer design here, because I don't really have any changes I already want to make when it comes to a new design. Obviously that could change, but I don't really suspect it would have, because I think we did a good job with that destroyer design. But that's going to be it for this half part. I will see you all next time, where we will be doing the actual design study for the Suo. That'll be finished, and maybe if we have the budget, we'll queue up 1 or 2 of those. We'll see if any of these designs potentially get actually brought out into service, or we legitimately start the design study. This is technically more of like the pre-design study, not the actual design study. This is the I wrote some shit on a napkin type stuff, rather than I actually drew the blueprints. This is napkin math basically for us. But that's going to be it for this part. Like I said, I will see you all next time. We'll be building the Suos, hopefully. Hopefully not getting into yet another war with Russia, because for some freaking reason the game wants us to go to war with Russia because of historical enemies. Great, thanks. But here's the thing, game. I don't want to fight Russia. It's not because I can't. It's because they're not exactly interesting to fight. Largely because they lack any capability to actually put up a decent fight. The biggest thing is just they're kind of annoying. And, you know, some game mechanics are really what makes them annoying more than anything else, honestly. But yeah. So I will see you all next time. Until then, goodbye and farewell.